Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is a repeat offender, in fact, a multiple repeat offender, and it's the famous Mike McColowitz, the founder of Profit First, multiple New York Times bestselling author, and in my opinion, one of the two most important small business thinkers and authors who are active today. So let's bring Mike on and start the conversation because he has a new book. And if you look behind him, you'll see it says, Let's Go All In. And the name of the book is All In. And Mike can tell us what the book is about because I'm curious.
Yeah. Here it is. Here it is. I mean, totally in that promotion mode here. Um, how I came about was I've been asked by entrepreneurs, how do I recruit and retain people? How do I raise the bar? Something I earnestly started looking into maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And then COVID hit, Josh. And when that hit, it was, I think, put everything on steroids. We very rapidly entered this new work environment with remote workers and the new, millennial generation coming in. Um, so I doubled down on my research and found four core elements that we need to address as leaders to recruit, retain, and raise the bar. I call it the FASO model, FASO. And of course, I can explain it, but we need to deploy these strategies to build a modern team. The the sad part is most businesses don't. Most businesses struggle. Most businesses don't hire A players or can't find them and believe they'll never be able to. And it's not that those people don't exist. It's not that the opportunities aren't there. It's just how the leadership is operating. And I think we need to fix
So, Mike, I have a question for you.
that.
What's your
Yeah.
definition of an A player? Because for me, I think this is a really big deal that business
Yeah.
owners need. And we may have a different definition, by the way.
I suspect we may. So an A player is someone whose identity is associated with their responsibility to the company. That the company is part of them and they're part of the company. Which, when our identity is part of something, we elevate to our highest level of performance. Now, here's the thing that I've been saying that maybe is perhaps most controversial. Every human being on this planet, yourself, myself, everyone listening in, everyone's planet is an A player. It's just an A player in waiting in many cases. And it doesn't mean everyone's an A player for your company. My company, we have collectively 20 employees. We got 20 spots for 6 billion people or whatever it is now, 8 billion people on this planet. Chances are the vast majority of people will never be served by our business. But everyone's an A player if they simply have the right role, the right fit for where their talents are or where their interests are, and they can associate their identity with it, they will excel in that capacity. So my job as a leader is do I have the opportunity for the right person here and can make it part of their identity, or do I not? And should I direct them elsewhere?
That is a great evaluation. Most people, when they say A player, it's a star who's going to be better than anybody else in the universe. And
Right.
the truth is, and this was especially true in my food service company, I wanted my A players to really, really identify with our values and to be representative of our values. I
Yeah.
didn't need them to become master of the universe. When I had a route driver, I didn't want to hire route drivers that were looking for the next promotion. I wanted route drivers who would be happy doing that job for 20 years because it took us 6 to 9 months to get somebody really up to speed. And
Yeah.
retraining and changing and small companies, we just don't have a lot of room for growth. I mean, as far as job growth goes, so you need to hire people who are happy doing the job you hire them for.
That's right. That's right. And to realize some people may grow through your company but not stay there. I,
And that's fine.
yeah, that's totally fine. There's a saying, I'm going to bastardize it. I do mention in the book, and this is not my saying. I know you've heard this before. Is some people say, I don't want to train my people because if I train my people, they may leave. But here's the reality: is if you don't train or improve your people, they will stay, right? So we can get people who are not growing or developing, and therefore their potential is capped, and they can't contribute the highest level. If you continue to grow a colleague, an employee, or company, they can serve your company better. And yes, it's true. At a certain point, they may leave, but you've extracted the value your company could most benefit from because you helped elevate them, but you've also served them in the most deep way. Um, I think it's absurd, particularly in modern times, to expect someone to come to your company and stay with you for the entirety of their life. So let's have that plan for them to have an exceptional experience and exceptional contribution over the next 3 to 5 years and move on. One last thing, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs. One of the big fears entrepreneurs have is if I bring on someone who has all this drive and motivation, they may learn everything about how to operate my business and decide to start a competing business. So I can't bring on someone that has that entrepreneurial dream. And my argument is that may actually be your best candidate. Why not develop a path with the intention of learn through me for 5 years, and on your sixth year, you're going to start your own company. And guess what? I'll be your first investor. I'll share in 10% of your business, but I'll give you clients and opportunities and we'll spawn your business. Now you're actually expanding yourself while giving people the opportunity to pursue their dreams and desires.
My father did that probably a dozen times when
Oh,
I
you
was
did?
growing up. Yeah, he did. This was over 50 years ago.
Yeah,
He
I
would
love it.
his idea was everybody should be in their own business, no matter what. That was his
Yeah,
belief system. So if anybody showed any interest of being in their own business, he would help them start a business and he would finance it. And he would take a major ownership role on it. I think he did that. He did it with his bookkeeper. He did it with his food service manager. He did it with one of his salespeople. So it worked incredibly well for him. We did it when we started different divisions up. We would often give somebody ownership in the division that they like. When we opened a catering company, we gave one of our people ownership in a catering company when they came to work with us.
I love
So
that.
I think that's a great thing to do. And we also have to recognize there are a lot of people in the world that work is just an avenue for their personal life.
For sure.
We
For sure.
want them to be really happy, really good at what the job they do. But the truth is, they're going to turn work off at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or noon for our route drivers and go do something else, which they actually like doing. And the job that you have for them is what gives them the opportunity to do so. And we shouldn't try to punish them for it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a means to the end. There was a study and research I read that 17% of the population ever starts or operates a business, which means 83% will simply, for the entirety of our lives, have a job at someone else's company. So one thing I have is as a leader or an owner of a company, our greatest job is to be a creator of jobs. Don't do the job, create the jobs, because the majority of the world wants a good job with a good company. In regards to the entrepreneurial dream, I also agree that we need to support that. So if someone has that, I too will often invest, usually through my network as opposed to monetary investment. I think that can sometimes actually weaken relationships where you give someone money and it's other people's money, um,
Right.
usually through introductions. And you got to learn through the burn. You got to go through the experience. One thing that was interesting that I found when I was researching all in, and it's about halfway in the book, I started researching ESOPs and the motivational impact. The concept of an ESOP is where the employees of a company take ownership as a collective of the business. But what I found is in many cases, not all, but in many cases, it invokes entitlement, where we think employees will be more committed because, hey, now it's my company, I own it. They actually become less committed. And the reason is they say, well, you owe me. Where's my shares? I'm not getting my fair piece. It causes almost a fiefdom.
Like,
So there's,
I have to
yeah,
push back on that. I just have
all right,
to.
pushback.
Okay. I'm a huge ESOP fan. But the problem with the ESOPs you're just describing are ESOPs that are done for monetary purposes and not the social purposes of what an ESOP can do.
Right.
There's a culture of an ESOP, an ownership culture that the ESOP Association talks about on a regular basis. Companies who do that, that share information, that teach people how to be leaders, that help people grow in the jobs and give them a say in what happens in the company through an ESOP committee. Those ESOPs are both economically and personally successful. An ESOP is a really, really powerful economic tool. Unfortunately, there's a ton of people out there who are selling the economic tool and not the ESOP culture.
Yeah, it's true.
And if you
Um,
sell the ESOP culture with the economic tool, you have an organization that nobody can come close to competing with.
Correct. So
So,
here's what's interesting. REI is an excellent execution of an ESOP. If
yes,
you're interested in looking, and I talk about them. Here's what I found is the components, and it supports your argument and why I found that most ESOPs fail because it's only economics. There's
right.
two components of ownership. There's what's called legal ownership, and there's what's called psychological ownership. And I devoted most of this book toward the concept of invoking psychological ownership. So the analogy I use is a rental car. I don't know how you are, Josh, with a rental car, but when I get a rental car and I finally get out of that DMZ of a checkout, um, when the traffic light comes up, I am flooring it to get through. I'll jam on the brakes. I'll punch it when it turns green. I abuse the car, not severely, but I definitely drive it more aggressively than I would my own car. And I surely don't take it for a car wash before I return it. When we rent something, we have a responsibility. Fill it with gas, no scratches, no dents, clean interior. And if you fail to do that, there's punitive consequences. We're going to charge you, it's $10 a gallon to fill this or whatever the consequences are. What happens in a situation like that, where we have all these compliance requirements, is that we seek ways to get our advantage, floor it, abuse it. So I have this little rhyme. If we're forced to comply, we will seek to defy. Most leaders in their companies come with these requirements saying, this is what you got to do within your job specs. And if you fail to do this, there's big time consequences. And what human nature is if I force you to do something, you're going to get even with me. So we're forced to comply, we seek to defy. Great leaders will make their team flourish because they do it through nourishment. They nourish the employee. Now, think about when you own a car. I have a car, and I just did a long drive. At the end of the drive, I patted it on the dashboard and said, "Good girl," like it's human all of a sudden. Like, great drive. I definitely take it for a car wash. I take care of the maintenance. Well, the irony is, I don't actually legally own that car. I'm making payments to the bank who legally owns it, but I have what's called psychological ownership. That's what we need to do with our employees. There are three ways to achieve this. One is give that person control where they have authority over where the direction of that car goes. So I can park it where I want to park it. I can drive it when I want to drive it. It sits and waits for me. So if we can give someone a degree of authority in their role where they can give it direction and control, they'll feel more connection to it. The second thing is ability to personalize. I can put dice on the rearview mirror, put a sticker on the windshield or something, or the back of the car. The ability to personalize gives more authority. And the last thing is intimate knowledge. The more detail we know about something. So with our employees, we don't have to give just the economics. I understand what you're saying with the ESOPs, but more importantly, we have to give them the psychological ownership, some form of control, some form of authority, some form of intimate knowledge and personalization. Now, this too has a dark side. Fiefdoms can happen. You can have that employee head knows everything about their job and they're blocking everyone out because now they can assert themselves. So we want to avoid that. But those elements can invoke psychological ownership, and that builds that loyalty and reciprocity that we want from our team.
Yeah, Mike. You're absolutely right about that. The other piece, which I would add in, is that you definitely want psychological ownership of your job, but you also want understanding of the company. And that means, in my world, sharing all the information you have except one thing. And that's what everybody makes. When you share
Yeah.
your financials, you take salaries as one number for everybody. You don't want to be sure, and people know what everybody else makes anyhow in a small company, but you don't want to put it out there to make it more annoying. But when you run open book management and you share numbers with your people, you're telling them, I trust you. I
Mm-hmm.
trust you to keep this stuff within where we are. And the truth is, if somebody was to go out and take my profit and loss statement, my cash flow statement, and my balance sheet and share with my worst customer, they aren't going to learn one thing that will give them an advantage over me.
Oh,
Not
your
one.
hardest competitor. Yeah, I agree.
Now, if I
It's funny.
if I share, now I have lots of internal numbers I keep, like what's my dollars per stop or how many
Sure.
repeat service calls, even that isn't going to give you any sort of an advantage.
That's
And
right.
the
I
real
agree.
thing is the stuff that I'm willing to do to create this great company, I know my competitors aren't going to do it.
Agreed.
I
So
mean,
so we're digging into this FASO model we talked about. So
yeah,
O is ownership, S stands for safety, and I want to touch on this open book management. I
yeah,
talk about that in the book and all in. And here's what is up with safety is when you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, for all of humanity, we have the necessity of physical safety. So, and physical, biological or physiological needs like, drink water, eat food, shelter over our head. One of the elements of safety, the core essence is financial security. And hopefully your viewers and yourself haven't been there, but I know you have, I have, is where we're financially unsecure and the stress that puts on us, like how am I going to get my next dollar? So, one part of safety that we can invoke with our employees is A, give them a fair and appropriate salary for the work they do. Give them the best you can offer. There's no question about that. But the bigger component I found in my research is open books. Because when they know the security of the company, where the company's headed, they have more comfort in their own security. So that brings that about. If we keep the books hidden, the question is like, how are things going to go tomorrow or not? I was talking about the Enron case, and in Enron's case, how many people committed suicide and had PTSD after the Enron collapse because everyone was blind to the health of the organization, and then they got blindsided. So open books brings about that safety and security and the health for the individuals.
so there's something else also about open books. Um, we often talk about open book as a positive side when business is going well. I actually think open book is more important when things are not going well. Because when
Mm-hmm.
business is not going well and it continues, you have to make some really, really hard decisions. And if you're sharing the numbers, people
Agreed.
understand those hard decisions are a necessity, not just something for you to stick more money in your pocket. And
Agreed. It's all it's reciprocity. When we speak openly about ourselves, our colleagues will speak openly about themselves. There's another part of reciprocity. And I learned this from my prior company. I was in forensic investigations, and I remember I sat behind the in my office, kind of behind the wall, calculating all these numbers, and it hit me. My gosh, if we do X, Y, and Z, we can do $10 million of revenue this year, and that would be the first time in my life I ever had a business that does $10 million in revenue. So I was excited. I had 30 employees at the time. I called everyone in for an all hands meeting. I had like one of those little sticky notes, those big ones, I should say, that you put over like a whiteboard.
yeah,
Behind it, the number 10 million. I had Eye of the Tiger playing, like the whole cheesy buildup. And I said, hey guys, I've done it. This is the year we're going to do it. And I ripped off with great flair the sticky note and it reveals the $10 million. And I expect people to go crazy. Oh my God, we can do this. And it was silent. And it was
yeah,
like, no one cared. My assistant at the time, her name was Patty, came up to me. She goes, Mike, if we do $10 million in revenue, you get the new house, you get the new car. Why should we care? And it was this epiphany, a slap in the face more, that I was caring about my dream, but not theirs. The goals of a corporation inevitably are the goals of the owner and the leadership team. This means something to us of significance, but to everyone else at the company, it may not. That day forward, I started to invest time into understanding what my colleagues wanted. Someone wants to buy their first house, to learn a new language, or whatever it is. And once I understood what their personal dreams were and made that a priority, part of the regular discussion of their employment, are you working toward that? Is there any block and tackling we can do for you? That when I became invested in their dreams and vision, they became invested in the company's vision. That's
yeah.
what a great leader does is we care for our individual colleagues' dreams and visions and support those.
Yeah, the other thing, and this is true with the really good, I've spent a lot of time with ESOPs. So I use ESOPs a lot as an example.
You're a big
And
ESOPer.
yeah, I've been promoting ESOPs for a long time for the right
I
company.
love it.
For the right company. There's not
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
companies that's right for it. But um, we did this in our food service company. You can have the culture of an ESOP without an ESOP, by the way,
Yeah, sure.
which we did, and it worked really well. One of the things we did really well was that we had a profit sharing plan. The profit sharing plan was based on a hurdle rate. We hit more than X profit. We shared a percent of the excess with everybody in the company based on a point system.
Yeah.
It was fair, it was transparent. And the thing that happened was our good people would make the people who were mediocre become good because they kept saying, hey, you're taking money out of my pocket.
Hmm.
And when you share information and you share results that go into the results of every individual, you get more buy-in to what you're trying to do. Again, it's not the right situation for everybody. When we changed our compensation system, we lost 50% of our employees in the route world. However,
How did you change how did you change your
we went
compensation?
we went from having an hourly rate to a straight commission for how much they did.
Oh, I
We
see.
guaranteed nobody would make less money. And the truth was, everyone got a 50% increase, but there was enough people who didn't like this system, they left. That was
Yeah.
fine with me because they weren't a good match for how we were running the company. You
Yeah.
want people in your company who are a good match, and you talk about that brilliantly, Mike.
Yeah. I call it fit.
Right,
And I think what most companies do historically is we figure out a title and say, okay, I need a CMO. And ironically, I say many small businesses abuse titles. We use these lofty titles for our perceived outside value, meaning, oh, someone else is going to see that I have a CFO and a CMO. They're going to think we're a big company. But the reality is, internally, when I have 10 people working my business and I have a CFO, that person's not a CFO, they're a bookkeeper.
right.
And so there's a disconnect between their title and what is required of them. And that can be real problematic. I actually hired a guy under that exact circumstance. I had about 25 employees. I called him the CFO. He was a controller, quote unquote, at best. Like that was what the skills are we needed. But he came back to me and said, Mike, I've been working for you. You know, a CFO, on my research, our CFO makes $500,000 to $1.5 million a year. And I'm like, oh, you're not really a CFO. That's his title. And he's like, no, I'm a CFO. And he left my company. He couldn't get a CFO job because he wasn't a CFO, but I lost out. The problem most companies do is we try to put a title in place and say, I need to find the talent that can meet that title. The better companies, great leaders, match talent to task. What they do is they break down what are all the different tasks going on in our organization. You take that one title, maybe there's 10 common tasks. Who's best for each task? Now, it's not usually the same person. It's not one person can fill all these 10 roles. So, an example, in my own company, I had a receptionist. Receptionist duty was, greet people walking in the door, answer phones, um, light data entry because there wasn't people always calling. And then I had a salesperson whose job was to close the big deals, but also to farm relationships to build that rapport. Also, do a little bit of data entry, CRMs and so forth. Well, I found out when I looked at the individual tasks, my receptionist was amazing at greeting people and building rapport. She just had that effervescence about her. She was horrible at the data entry or data tracking, even though we had her do some of our light accounting. She was actually causing more problems than anything. In normal circumstances, I'd say, oh, she's not a good receptionist. She shouldn't be with our company. What I did is I matched talent to task. I said, well, she's so good at greeting people. My salesperson is good at closing the big deal, but actually not good at farming relationships. We took our receptionist and put her into, in part, a capacity of farming relationships, and those relationships flourished. Our former salesperson was great at the data entry, so he started doing more of that. He was great at the data tracking and closing the big deals. Our company was served so much better by intertwining almost like a web structure as opposed to having people within their individual titles. So that's the lesson here for your fits. Understand the tasks within the titles and match the best talent to the tasks.
Mike, I wish we could go into this more because I think fit is just such a huge thing, but unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bet. Yeah, it goes by really fast when
Yeah, I
you're on
know.
the show, that's for sure. So how are people going to find your new book? What is it? Where is it? I know you're having a launch party this afternoon.
Yeah, yeah. So it literally is launching today. I'm honored to be on your show today that launched. So it's called All In. Here it is. If you're watching the video by me, by Mike Michalowicz, you can get on Amazon, you can get local bookstores, you can get anywhere. But if you want, go to allinbymike.com, allinbymike.com. And right now I have a multi-book offer. Some people are buying like 2 or 4 copies, and you get lots of bonuses, free stuff, behind the scenes stuff, chapters that were deleted and so forth. So that's allinbymike.com/multi. But yeah,
Cool.
check it out on Amazon.
And I'd like to have you guys, please, please. We took a month off. First time I've taken time off of this podcast in 8 years,
Wow.
and we're back. So we're going to be doing again weekly things, but it's really important that you go to wherever you're listening to the show and give us an honest rating review. If you love us, give us 5 stars. If you don't, you give us 1 star or 2 stars, and I cry and you laugh, and that's how it is. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with Mike McCall. You're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.